Senior international correspondent George Thomas is with me now. Welcome, George.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, this latest round of sanctions is by far the most significant, right?
It is. Pretty much it's a second round of sanctions since the United States pulled out of the controversial Iran nuclear deal that was signed by the previous administration back in 2015. In essence, the second round, Mark, goes after about 700 Iranian-linked individuals, entities, companies, including major banks, oil exporters, shipping companies, aircrafts, vessels. In total, Mark, in the last 2 years, over 900 Iranian entities have been slapped by these crippling sanctions. Clearly, the administration is trying to send a very, very strong message to the Iranian regime. Keep in mind, the administration, President Trump, during the campaign was very, very hard on the previous administration's handling of this Iran nuclear deal. He thought it was a rotten deal from the get-go, and he's using this time and the new round of sanctions to, in essence, create a new deal. Whether that is in the works is still to be known.
Well, we need to mention that the Trump administration is giving exemptions to 8 countries to continue importing Iranian oil. Do we know who is on that list and why the White House is doing this?
Yeah, and I think to our viewers, you'll probably be surprised to say, wait a minute, I thought this was all about crippling sanctions. Why are we allowing Iran to continue selling its oil? Keep in mind, the oil industry is at the crux, at the heart of Iranians' economy. So here's what we understand. As you mentioned, there are 8 countries that the United States, that the White House has exempted from this deal. The 8 are following: China, India, Greece, Italy, Turkey, South Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. An important note here is that this deal for them, this exemption, will run out in the next 6 months. According to Secretary of State Pompeo, who said this morning, the idea here is that it would give countries like India — keep in mind, India is the second largest importer of Iranian oil. China is number 1. The idea for this White House is to allow some of these emerging countries to not suffer such a blow from potential sanctions against them. So they've given these 8 countries 4 to 6 months to get their act together, and eventually, as Secretary Pompeo said, that they would basically go down to importing 0 barrels of oil from the Islamic regime.
What is the president's calculus with this new round of sanctions?
The calculus with this White House is that this will force the Iranians, number one, to the negotiating table, to negotiate a whole new nuclear deal, which would in essence say to the Iranian regime, you have got to cease and desist with your nuclear ambitions. That is completely off the table. You agree to that, and we will bring you back into the global fold. Number 2, I think less talked about, but it is clearly implied. This particular White House wants a regime change, wants a new leadership in the government. Whether that's going to happen is very, very doubtful. Keep in mind, we are celebrating 39 years, November 4th, 1979, when Iranian Muslims, radical Muslims, took over our U.S. embassy in downtown Tehran, and they have basically survived over the last 40 years with all of the economic pressure, political, military pressure on this country. They have survived 40 years later, and there is no indication that the ruling Ayatollahs are going to any time exit the stage.
Well, what has been the reaction in Iran overall?
Well, I mean, they are feeling the pinch. There is no doubt about it. On the streets of Tehran, people are feeling the squeeze. Everything from transportation, food, medical costs, everything has gone up, double, sometimes in triple numbers. And so they are feeling the squeeze. The United States is very clear. The administration is very clear. Our enemy, we're not targeting the Iranian people. We are going after the regime. We want the regime to reform. As Secretary Pompeo said, that the pressure will be relentless, his words, and will continue until, quote, the revolutionary course by the Islamic regime is put to an end.
All right. Thank you, George. Our senior international correspondent, George Thomas. Thanks as always.
You're welcome, sir.